All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Um, um, so today we're gonna do contract to close. We're gonna focus on the buyer side. This is gonna be the I got an accepted offer. Now what do I do? So we're gonna go through a checklist that you have access to. We're gonna go kind of talk through what some of those points on that checklist mean. And then I'll also show you a little bit with command opportunities and uploading your documents in command. We're not going to spend too much time going through the whole command process because we do a lot of trainings on that as well. So um, lots of videos for you to check out regarding entering your commissions in command and everything like that. So we're really going to focus on communication, I guess is probably the best way to say it. We're going to talk about what to do, when to do it, and like how to keep moving forward. Um, all right, so first I want to show you how to find these checklists. So you have access to our kwrealtymke.com website, and this is your basically all your resources in one. You can just go straight into the agent hub. That's where you're going to find most things. And scroll about midway down, you're going to see these new associate resources. As a new agent, you're really going to kind of live right here. So this how to get paid in command video on the left-hand side of my screen really starts with the entire process of like creating a contact, creating the opportunity, writing contracts through zip forms, sending them for e-signatures, uploading documents in your opportunity, submitting your commissions in command. That's all in that one video. So it's a really great resource to kind of keep going back to. You can kind of fast forward to this particular sections you need. Like, you forgot how to start the transaction in zip forms, but you're kind of good everywhere else. You can fast forward, that sort of thing. But for this contract to close trainings that we're going to do every month, we are going to focus on these listing and buyer checklists. And if you can click on view right there, you'll get these three checklists that we have. So the first one is a new listing checklist. So this is the sellers want to list their house. What do I do? Right? So before you ever get an accepted offer on that listing, these are the things that you should be doing. There's also the accepted offer checklist when you are on the listing side. So how to handle that and what you need to do for that process. But like I said, today we're going to focus on the buyer side. So this is the I have an accepted offer from my buyers. Now what do I do checklist. If you went to Accelerator, these are all printed off and in your Accelerator binder as well. And we probably update them once a year just to make sure that all the details are still the same. So let's take a look at this checklist. The first things first is submission of your files and commands. So right at the top there, it says that you need to submit your documents for review within 7 days of that accepted offer. Okay. Now, obviously, 7 days after you get an accepted offer, you might not have all the documents that are pertinent to that transaction. Like you might not have the inspection report yet, or maybe you're still negotiating the inspection and haven't come to an agreement on an amendment, or maybe you don't have the earnest money receipt or whatever that may be. That is perfectly okay. You can continue to add documents and resubmit that opportunity to compliance again and again and again and again as you go through the transaction. But for that initial upload, we want to see that within 7 days of the accepted offer. So you might not have all the required documents, you might not have all the documents that are actually going to be needed for the transaction, but just upload what you have. It's the only way that our compliance team can even start to review your documents is if you submit them. We cannot just see them, on your hard drive. So you have to submit them so we can start reviewing them, and we will gladly relook over documents as you upload them. Okay. So the first thing we're going to have to do is add our buyer's information to your contacts in Command. Now, hopefully, you've been lead generating. You got this client somehow, whether it was an open house or maybe it's somebody that you already know, somebody that's in your sphere. So they should have already been in your database and they should already be a contact in Command. If for some reason, they aren't in your Command, you definitely want to make sure that you enter them in as a contact in Command to be able to start the opportunity. Then you have a couple of different folders in Command. You have a consultation folder, which is where you're going to find your buyer agency agreement, disclosure forms, and then you also have your under contract folder where you're going to put all the other documents. Now, if you're in the Southwest office, I don't believe there's anything in the consultation folder. I believe that buyer agency and disclosures all get put into that under contract folder. So if you're in Southwest, you might not have two separate folders to upload documents in. It might just be one. All the other offices, there's the two separate folders. So things that are going to be mandatory that you upload are your accepted offer. Now, the accepted offer means the offer to purchase plus all of the counter offers that were signed. If you did 7 counter offers back and forth with the seller, we do need all of those counter offers. But what we want you to do before you upload them is to put them in order of the accepted counter offer on top so we can see that first. At the end of the day, when you're countering back and forth, the only counter offer that matters is the one that is fully executed by both parties. So we want that one on top, and then all the other counter offers that were written and negotiated with underneath that in one document. GMAR Addendum A. So it is best practice to have a GMAR Addendum A filled out with all the agent's informations on the last page. Even if the GMAR Addendum A doesn't have any additional contingencies checked, it's still best practice to include it. There are some things that on that GMAR Addendum A that you never know might come into play during your transaction. Things like underground storage tanks and what to do if you encounter one on the property. If you don't have that language already in the offer, then it kind of leaves a lot up to negotiation with the buyer and seller to handle the underground storage tank. Whereas if you had just attached the GMAR Addendum A to your offer, it would already be clear and clearly written as to what needs to happen with the underground storage tank. So if you're not super familiar with the GMAR Addendum A, I highly recommend you read through it a couple of times. Make sure you understand really what are the additional provisions that are in there, all the additional contingencies and what they say. It's just going to make you a better agent, especially when you're working with your buyers and you're having to write those offers so that you understand what your actually is part of the offer. Of course, we need the real estate condition report. So your E&O insurance requires you to have a couple of documents in each transaction. One of them is the condition report or the seller's refusal to fill out the condition report, which is a separate form, and sellers are free to also fill out that refusal form. That basically says they're not going to sign a condition report and they don't really have to give a reason. But one of the two needs to be filled out and signed and uploaded into Command as well. Up next is Addendum S, or lead-based paint. So again, that's mandatory for homes that are built prior to 1978. So, those some listing agents will include an Addendum S regardless of the year the property was built. If there is one in MLS, even if it's a home built in the 1990s, go ahead and have your client sign it and go ahead and include it as part of the offer package. It's just best practice that if it's there for the seller has filled it out, for the buyer to also fill it out and understand their risk with lead-based paint. If you're doing condo deal, know that there's going to be additional documents that you're going to need for condos, which is the condo addendum to the condition report and the executive summary. Those are two separate things. The earnest money receipt, we need to make sure that earnest money was paid and it was at the correct amount. And the receipt will also tell us who is holding that earnest money, as well as the offer to purchase should outline who is holding the earnest money. Another thing that your E&O insurance requires is the home inspection. So there either needs to be a home inspection report, or the buyers have to waive their right to a home inspection. There is a WRA form that basically says buyer's acknowledgement of risk when waiving a home inspection, I believe is the full title. So making sure that your buyers, if they do not want a home inspection, that they're signing that waiver, and then you can include that waiver in the documents in command. Again, there's probably going to be lots of amendments executed during your transaction. I think the most I've ever had in a transaction was 7, but I don't think I've ever gotten away without at least one amendment signed during a transaction. So as those get executed, make sure you're uploading them and resubmitting them to compliance to review. And then also your signed loan commitment or the permission to deliver loan commitment or proof of funds, or understanding that the buyer does have the financial ability to purchase this house. Everybody kind of does it a little bit differently. So whether it's an actual signed loan commitment letter, or if it's a notice that is a permission to deliver loan commitment, one of those needs to be uploaded. Just know also, if you're in the Southwest office, there might be a few additional documents that you need to upload, like the title policy. You know, every time somebody asks me, like, you know, why is it mandatory? Why is this mandatory? Why is that mandatory? Why is the offer to purchase, 13 pages long? The answer is usually because at one point in time, somebody got in trouble and the attorney said so. So if you ever ask yourself, why do I need to upload this? Or what's the point of this? It's probably because an attorney said so at some point in time, okay? So let's take a look at our opportunity in command, and we're kind of going to go back and forth between this checklist and command a little bit and talk through some of these scenarios. So when you're in command, I just went ahead and I had my buyer that's under contract here. And I'm going to click into the opportunity, and then I can come over here to the documents tab. The first thing you need to do is pick a checklist type, okay? So this checklist is going to pre-fill in placeholders for you to upload your documents in command. So is this a residential home? Is this a condo, vacant land? Or is it an outgoing referral in which you're just getting paid, and in which case the only documents you need to upload are just the referral agreement? So this is going to be a residential buyer. And what that does for me is it inputs all these placeholders for all the documents that I'm going to need to upload eventually. So you'll see in this consultation folder, we have a couple of required documents. So like we talked about, that buyer agency agreement, those RESPA disclosures that we have to send all our clients and customers, and then also the KW disclosure. So those 2 disclosure forms. If you do have to send a referral, meaning that you're paying another agent because they gave you this buyer, we need to see that information as well for the referral to make sure it gets paid out correctly. And then in your under contract folder, you're going to see also all those required documents that we just talked through on that checklist. So they offer to purchase, the counter offers with the accepted counter on top, your GMAR addendum A, other various addendums that you could attach as well. The condition report inspection. Another one that's not on that checklist but is required is that home warranty. We either need to see an invoice because somebody has purchased a home warranty for the buyers, or we need the buyers to waive their coverage of a home warranty to acknowledge that we had a conversation about it. A lot of agents ask me, is it necessary to have a home warranty? Just for perspective, my house was built in 1958, and I use my home warranty probably twice a year. And I've definitely more than paid for it over and over again. So for me, it's worth it on my old house. The earnest money receipt, amendments and notices as they come through, that sort of thing. So again, these are just placeholders that you see in command. The actual documents, you're getting out of zip form, you're filling them out, you're sending them for signatures, and you're uploading the file that is fully the file that is fully executed by all parties. Okay. Any questions so far? Once you upload a file in Command, I'm just going to grab a generic PDF here. Once you upload a file, you'll see that the Submit to MC button at the top of the screen becomes blue, and you can click on it. That's what allows our compliance department to be able to view it. Okay, so unless you actually hit submit, we would have no idea that you're working on this file and that you have a client under contract. This is why we have that 7-day timeline, because until you click this button, we don't know this transaction exists. So we can't actually review anything. So always hit submit. If they haven't reviewed and you add more documents, the submit to MC will be grayed out, but just know that when they do go to review, any additional documents you've added will also be available for them. And then if they have reviewed it and those documents get returned, they're either going to say, so on the status here, either green for accepted or red for not accepted. And the red ones, you need to make sure you correct. So something's wrong with it. You might have not uploaded the offer to purchase that had the seller signature accidentally, or maybe you're missing a file and they're returning it so that you can make sure you upload it. So there's going to be a little bit of back and forth with the clients, the compliance departments regarding your documents in Command and your transactions. Their role, the entire role of the compliance department is to ensure that you have the documents that you needed in case there was ever an issue after closing. So if they say something's missing, you really need to work on getting it filled and uploaded. If they have questions, you need to make sure you're answering them. And then you also need to make sure that you're continually resubmitting those documents or new documents as you get them. All right. So I'm going to go back to my checklist. So we got all of our documents uploaded in Command. That's kind of our biggest, one of our priorities as far as like compliance goes. We have to make sure those documents are submitted. The next thing is to send the offer documents to the buyer and the lender. So there is nothing that I email my lender that I don't also copy my buyer on, maybe aside from just like a general question if I have one. All your executed documents, your clients should have a copy of. Now, if you're using Zip Forms and you're using DocuSign, they will receive a copy of it in their email. But I really like to kind of put it together in a pretty package for them. It helps them be able to search, like if they're going to search through their email because they want to pull something back up that you sent them. It also makes it so they can just forward that email over to maybe like an attorney. You're going to come across a lot of clients that are using attorneys to review. They're not actually using attorneys to write contracts. And they really just want to make sure that the attorney is okay with what's happening in the transaction, but the attorney usually really isn't involved in any way. They just kind of, it's like a comfort, right? They just want to make sure the attorney has eyes on it as well, knowing full well that like you're completely in control of the transaction for that as an agent. So I like to just put it in a pretty little package, a nice email goes to the lender and the buyer that says, here's the accepted offer. In that email, I also like to put all my dates and deadlines. So when you get an accepted offer, one of the very first things you should do is take out a calendar and take out your offer and make sure you know all your dates and deadlines. Okay. One thing that I know some agents will do is put all those dates and deadlines into their like Google Calendar on their phones so that they have them in there as well. You can also fill out dates and deadlines in Command under the Details tab. There's a couple of different dates and deadlines you can fill in here. And then If you put them in that email as well, you'll be able to reference back to them in that email, or maybe print the email, that sort of thing. So make sure you understand how to count those days. And then also make sure that if your offer says something in additional provisions, like if a date or deadline falls on a Sunday or a holiday, it'll move to the next business day. If your offer says that, when you're counting those dates and deadlines, make sure you understand that you have to move them to the next business day if they do fall on a weekend. So really take your time with it. You as a buyer's agent are ultimately responsible for all dates and deadlines in that offer. There can be serious repercussions if you as a buyer's agent miss a deadline. For example, the home inspection. If you miss a home inspection deadline and you haven't negotiated, or you haven't and get it signed on an amendment, or you haven't sent a notice of defects, your buyer will be buying that house as is, and there's really no recourse for your buyer. So when I say make sure you really know your dates and deadlines, make sure you understand them. You have them written somewhere that's accessible so you can continually check back on it. Whether you use a spreadsheet, a calendar, you like paper, so you print it out and keep it in a binder that's with you at all times. Whatever your method's going to be, think about that now, because you and only you are responsible for understanding and meeting those deadlines. Nobody else. You as the agent. Make sure you know when your loan commitment deadline is, because if you don't get that loan commitment in by that deadline, the seller can terminate the contract. And then what's your buyer going to do? Right? So whichever way is going to work for you, make sure you adhere to it. So I like to send all those dates and deadlines to my buyer and my lender. Usually the lender will also do their own dates and deadlines, and those dates should match. If they don't, then usually somebody says something. So you can figure out who's right. Then I also like to send those dates and deadlines over to the listing agent. Just again, one more good confirmation of, hey, listing agent, I'm really looking forward to working with you. Here are all the dates and deadlines we're going to be adhering to. If you have any questions, please let me know, right? So that way, the listing agent, when they also put together their dates and deadlines, because they should be doing the same thing you are, can make sure that those dates and deadlines match. So the more people you send your dates and deadlines to, the better chance you have of ensuring that they're correct, because if they're wrong, somebody will probably call you out on it. Pro tip. So as you're going through your dates and deadlines, usually the first one is earnest money, making sure you understand where that earnest money is being held. I would say 90% of your transactions are going to be the listing brokerage will hold the earnest money. Trust funds, electronic earnest money is usually what listing brokerages prefer for their earnest money. Just prevents people from having to handle checks. Otherwise, the buyer should submit a check to the listing brokerage. Again, and you're going to have to provide them with that information of what the earnest money is. After that, it's whatever's in the offer. So if you have a home inspection, you have to coordinate that home inspection with your buyer. You want to give them the deadline of when they need to get that, when we need to get it negotiated. So usually I say something like, all right, up next, buyer, is our home inspection. Here are 2 or 3 home inspectors that I recommend. We have until X date to come to an agreement with any repairs. So if you can have the home inspector out by this date, that should give us time to either negotiate or get follow-up inspections done. So I'm kind of giving them multiple dates because they don't necessarily understand what those dates all entail, right? So I would give them like here's when I need the inspector to be out to the house by, and then here's our actual like deadline to finish negotiating. Does that make sense? The next thing is also your financing. I don't worry a whole lot about the financing deadline up until we get a little bit closer to it. That lender, as soon as you send that accepted offer package, is going to be in touch with your client on getting the documents that the lender needs to proceed with the loan. And then the lender's the one who's ordering the appraiser out to the property as well. And they're going to adhere to that appraisal timeline that you write in the offer. So I generally I need to know what that date is, and I need to, when we get close to it, I need to make sure we're on track. But it's not something that I necessarily stress out about at the beginning. Let your lender take over handling that financing. Okay. So everything goes well. You get a little bit closer to closing. You should have a couple of things just to finalize, like that last week. And I'm kind of right about here. So the next thing we want to do is send that listing agent that final loan commitment. This is what waives the financing contingency. You really want to have it done either on the financing contingency deadline or maybe the day before. I don't like to necessarily send it too early, but within reason is fine. You try not to be late. Again, if you miss that deadline, the seller can walk away. So if you are going to be late on that deadline, I would make sure that you're in really clear communication with the listing agent about why you can't make that deadline or how much extra time you need. If I'm a listing agent, I am not extending that deadline for the buyer because I want my seller to maintain their rescission rights. However, I'm going to let it go for a few days. If you can kind of show me that you are making progress on that loan commitment, or it's not going to push closing, or whatever that scenario is. So your goal is to stay in contact with the lender as much as possible when you're getting close to that loan commitment deadline, to making sure that you get it signed off and sent over to the listing agent before that deadline. If you do negotiate for repairs as after a home inspection, you are going to need a copy of those lien waivers, paid receipts, invoices, any permits that were pulled. The title company and the lender will both need a copy of those, and they're also good for your buyer to have as well. So make sure that you get all of that. Most amendments that you write from the inspection are going to say that you need them within 3 days prior to closing. So 3 days prior to closing, make sure you get all those lien waivers sent over to title. That way they have all that information as well, and they can file it with their policy. Once again, you're continually uploading documents in Command. You've already done that commission page. You know you're going to get paid. And then the final walkthrough. So 3 days before closing, your buyer can do a final walkthrough. I usually like to do it the day before, maybe the day and the 2 days before. But I think that you don't. I've learned okay. I've definitely done a final walkthrough like an hour before closing, and there were a lot of issues that need to get addressed, and it was very bumpy, and there was a lot of anxiety on both sides, and it was not my proudest moment as an agent. So I highly recommend getting in there a day or two before closing. You can always go back a second time. Okay, so if 3 days before closing you show up for your final walkthrough and the seller's stuff is just all over the place and they haven't finished moving out and it's dirty, and there's a hole in the wall or whatever it is, we can start having a conversation about how to rectify it then, so that we can still get to the closing table in 3 days without extending it. Okay, we can't do that when you go to a final walkthrough an hour before. But what you can do is if you go 3 days, then you can go back the hour before closing and just verify that it was all taken care of, that it's how it should have been, right? Or if your buyers can't make it, you as an agent can also go a second time to verify that that stuff was done. But your buyers have a right to go walk that property before closing, and it's never anything you ever want to skip. I have seen more issues at a final walkthrough than I feel should be at a final walkthrough. So, um, whatever it takes to get the sellers out and that house cleaned and in good condition so that the buyers can get the key is what we do. So, take your final walkthroughs very seriously. Okay. Then once it closes, you're going to turn in your closing statement and your commission check to the front desk. Any of our offices is acceptable. So if your closing is in Whitefish Bay, just turn it into the Whitefish Bay office, even if you're a Southwest agent. Okay. And then this actually last one here is really smart. And most agents don't forget to do this, but the MLS has to be marked as sold. The agent actually gets 10 days to mark it as sold per MLS rules, which I think is a little extreme. So just make sure that once that's marked as closed, they've entered in your information. If you are on a team, most likely it needs to be your team entered in as closed, as sold. If there's any mistakes made in closing out that property, MLS can fix it, but like the agents can't. So you'd have to work with MLS to get it adjusted. So you just want to make sure that your information is in there so that you get credit for selling the house. So make sure that it's in there. Okay. So what I would do is I would just highly recommend, again, you come to the website, you download these checklists, you print them off, and work off the checklists as you have accepted offers. It's, you know, it'll help keep you organized. It'll help make sure what needs to be uploaded in command is there. Again, in your opportunities in command, making sure that anything that says is required is uploaded as well. Anything marked as required has to be uploaded, so make sure you do those. And it should be pretty straightforward, and you're going to learn a lot as you do transactions over and over again. Okay. What questions do you have? All right, well, don't forget, as you have questions, throw them out on the Pumble. We're here to answer them. We're here to help you through these transactions. No questions too small. So reach out if you need any help. Have a great day, everybody.